The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV, series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the mid-season finale of Season 1 of Star Trek Prodigy, called A Moral Star Part 2. Not an amoral star, but A Moral Star. It's hard to say. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Nanu.
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and we'd love to hear from you on our social media, so give us some comments and feedback there. I also want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network that you'll sure to enjoy, called The Secrets of Stargate, where we have a great panel, including Father Cory, talking about the fabulous Stargate TV series out there, including Stargate SG-1. And you want to get in on Stargate now because Amazon bought the MGM, which owns the rights to Stargate, which means I'm going to guess there's going to be $1 billion Stargate series reboot or continuation out there at some point soon. So you'll want to check that out. Get it on the ground floor.
We'll be talking about that too. That there's been some news relatively recently about that. So
yes, so definitely start listening to the Secrets of Stargate and watching one of the best sci-fi series of the late 1990s, early 2000s. That's wherever you can find fine podcasts, or at sqpn.com/Stargate. So Jimmy, Nanu, what, you have to tell everyone where that's from.
Oh, that's from Mork and Mindy. Mork from Mork. That's a typical Orkin greeting.
That's right. So
played by the great Robin Williams.
The late great Robin Williams. Fantastic. So, Jimmy, could you give us a recap of A Moral Star Part 2?
Oh, Shazbot. Yeah, okay. Last time, the Diviner got both Gwyn and the Protostar, but we learned that Gwyn's job was to distract her father while the kids freed all the slaves on the asteroid mining colony. This time, the kids do that. They fix the Rev-12's engines, restore artificial gravity, and fight off a bunch of robots with the help of the newly liberated slaves. Meanwhile, the Diviner is trying to get the core of the Protostar's drive back so he can make it to the Federation. He wants to go there. Helping him is the reprogrammed Dark Janeway, or so it seems, until Dark Janeway reveals that she's just been pretending. She's actually real Janeway. Gwyn updated her security systems to prevent the Diviner from overriding them. And after real Janeway's heel face turn, she attacks the Diviner and rips off one of the tubes of his biosuit, severely damaging him. This forces him to tell Gwyn the truth that he has been holding back. It turns out that he's from the future and has been sent back in time to save his home planet, Solemn. At some point, the Federation will make first contact with Solemn, and it will spark a civil war that will kill everyone. So, he's back in our time to stop that first contact from ever happening. To do that, he's put a computer virus on the Protostar, and when it comes back to the Federation, the virus will spread and cause all the Federation ships to turn on and destroy each other, thus destroying Starfleet. Gwyn thus realizes that they can never go back to Starfleet. At this moment, the kids start beaming over from the Rev-12. To take out the Diviner, Zero comes out of his shell and reveals his true Medusan form, driving the Diviner insane. Unfortunately, Gwyn sees a reflection of Zero and loses her memory of the encounter with her father, so she no longer knows about the virus on the Protostar. Afterwards, the former slaves are given the Rev-12 to take wherever they want, the Diviner is exiled alone on the asteroid mining colony, and the crew of the Protostar warp to Federation space. The last thing we see is the real Janeway, the real biological Admiral Janeway, on her new ship rushing to greet the Protostar. The end.
Excellent. So, yes, a lot happens in this one. We get a lot of answers to things that we'd been looking for.
It felt very satisfying as a season-ending, non-season ender.
Right, because
mid-season break.
Yeah, they call it a mid-season finale, but we have no idea when the next episode is going to be. Probably not till the end of 2022 at earliest, sometime in the fall or winter. So it's going to be a long time before we get the rest of this season. So it's satisfying to get some answers now. So we get this with the reveal that the diviner is trying to get to Starfleet with the ship. I said we get a reveal, but I'm still kind of uncertain why he is so focused on the protostar. Is it because in the future they know the protostar was lost, and therefore if we can find it and we can deliver it back to Starfleet and they'll welcome it with open arms?
That could be part of it. I'm guessing that it may have been the protostar that made first contact. And so that was the ship available to them. And or maybe not, but somehow he gets the protostar. That's the ship available. That's the one that has the virus on it.
Right.
He can't, re-engineer everything so that he can deliver the virus by a different way conveniently. So he wants the protostar because that's the one that's been armed as a weapon that he can use.
Well, there's also the aspect of that it's the only ship that can get from the Delta Quadrant to the Alpha Quadrant, within a matter of hours or days versus months or years.
Sure. There's also that factor that we did see, Janeway's memory of Dreadnock taking over the ship while it still had its crew on it. And so somehow we went from Captain Chakotay and the crew to the ship being abandoned and the ship being lost to the diviner somehow. So there's still some question on how that all happened. So more answers to come, apparently.
Yeah, and I'm expecting Chakotay in a dungeon at some point.
Yeah.
Or prison colony or something. And we did get a star date in this episode.
Yes,
this is in the 6100s.
And so that's much closer to Voyager. That would put it 7 years after Voyager. Okay. 6 years roughly. Because last endgame for Voyager was 54973, and this was 61103.
How does that compare
about
to
6 years?
Other dates we've had, like Lower Decks? Do we recall what Lower Decks was?
Lower Decks, I don't remember.
Memory Alpha has a big timeline thing that has everything.
And that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
It's effectively, though, 20 years after the beginning of Next Generation, because that began with the 41,000s.
Right.
Lower Decks numbers, the only date we know is from end of season 2 is 58130. So this would still be 3 years after Lower Decks. So it's still about the right time frame.
But before
that's 61.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, it was nice to kind of be able to set it in time finally and figure out when things are.
And I don't know if the one we'd argued about, the 601,000 stardate, was just a mistake on the writer's part.
It could have been, or could have been.
They just kind of kept in there.
I know they said it was supposed to reflect the time distortion, but it is so far out in the future that I'm guessing writer's mistake, and that was a cover excuse. It's oh, no, it was because of the time distortion in that episode. That's why.
So it wasn't like fat finger to zero.
Yeah, exactly.
So we mentioned that back on Tars Lamora, the mining prison planet. The Watchers, which are the robots that have been the prison guards for all the unwanted, they're called.
They're like little mechanical sea lice scorpions.
Yeah. They get a definite droideca droid feel to them from the Star Wars prequels. A real feel from that too. They reactivate, and so you got Rock and can never get his name right.
Jankum Pog.
I was going to say switch the J and the P. Jankum Pog.
think Janky Pig.
Janky Pig. Thank you. That will now be perfect.
There you go.
Jankum Pog. They need to go fix the Rev 12 engines. I want to say Rev 12 engines. And Jankum has been the engineer all this time, but he doesn't know what to do. But we recall that Rock had all that time to learn about engineering, and so she knows exactly what to do. And
so now she's spouting technobabble like the best of them.
Yes. Yep. Although, go ahead.
I was going to say, one thing I do like about this is they haven't dropped it. It's so often in Star Trek, you'll have a character will go through these, life-changing experiences, and the next episode they're rebooted back to their regular character.
Right.
And they haven't dropped this. So
on the other hand, I appreciate that. I would appreciate it more if this were not as blunt as children's writing television writing tends to be, where it's like, you're still treating me like I'm just capable of being a security officer when I can do all this stuff too now. And it's like, okay, no, I got that. I understood that, as soon as you came out of the time loop. So tell us what you can do and let's have you do that. But it doesn't get portrayed that way in children's TV writing.
There's a definite Game of Thrones moment here, by the way, where if you haven't watched Game of Thrones, there's a character named Hodor, and there's this dramatic moment where the hordes of bad guys are trying to get through the door, and he has to hold the door, and that's where we find out he got his name through a mental thing through time to when he was a child. It's kind of a weird Game of Thrones thing, but she's got this Hodor moment.
They have time weird mental things in Game of Thrones?
Yes. It's he projects it back in time to his younger self, his name.
Was this like a last season? Because I heard the last season of Game of Thrones just went off the rails.
Oh, yeah. It's a last season thing, and it just got off the rails. So then we have Dreadnock, who shows up just as beams down again because the protostars come back for its drive. Just as Dal has figured out how to work the translators into all the manacles. So now all of the unwanted, who we may have forgotten, or some of us did, that that they couldn't communicate with each other, all these different species, and finally they can communicate. And they're so intent on talking to the people that they've worked beside for all these years without being able to communicate that that Dal's like, okay, talk later, escape now. He's trying to get them to the ship.
And if they've really been here for years, they should have. That's not fully realistic. You would develop a pigeon.
Yes.
Pigeons naturally occur when you have people who don't speak the same language encountering each other and forced to work or live beside each other. A pigeon is a simplified version of a language that frequently borrows elements from more than one language. And you strip off all of the weird inflected forms and just go with basic nouns and verbs and you make it work. And they should have Tars Lamora pigeon by this point.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. At basic, each other's name. You point to your chest, Dom, and that sort of stuff. And rock, you point to a rock, that would have happened. Teach
each other the names for, slop and ankle bracelet and things like that.
Yeah. It would have had happened. So the Cation child, the one that looks like a little kitty cat,
she's back, and she's got lightsaber claws.
She's got the Black Panther vibranium claws. I just watched Captain America: Civil War yesterday, so that's what it reminded me of. And she's the one who dispatches Dreadnock in the end, which is
she decapitates him.
Yeah. She gets a moment there,
and she gets a line.
We actually get, because now the translator's working, she gets to talk. I don't recall it, but
it wasn't particularly memorable. It was basically posturing.
We've got a voice now, something like that.
Yeah. But the diviner still gets the protocore from Murph, who had swallowed it, and gets back to the ship. I missed the point that the hollow Janeway protection was not that Gwyn reversing it at the moment, but that she'd installed upgrades to prevent the takeover before, which would make sense.
Yep.
Because of what Dreadnock had done in the past to delete her.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's upgrade her antivirus.
Well, there was a line in the previous episode when they were heading back to the diviner that, she said, "Oh, that's a great upgrade," something like that, where Gwyn was working on an upgrade, and that's or needing, and basically Gwyn just put some anti-hacking software, which they should have had by the 24th century, but that's a whole nother, and as well as antivirus, but that's a whole nother story.
Norton, 24th century.
By the way, since y'all are forcing me, since it's forced Jimmy to explain terminology meanings today, I will explain one that I used in the episode description, where I described Janeway as having a heel face turn.
Sure.
Because not everybody may know what that is. So in professional wrestling, it's all really plotted out and scripted in advance, and
It's
it's like reality television. It's not the plot lines you see running on professional wrestling are not real. They are artificial, but professional wrestlers pretend as if they are real to give the illusion of verisimilitude, and this illusion of verisimilitude in professional wrestling is known as kayfabe, which is sort of Pig Latin for fake. And professional wrestlers do not break kayfabe in public usually, but behind the scenes, they have a whole set of jargon for talking about stuff. So some wrestlers are portrayed as villains at various points in their career, and these villain wrestlers are known as heels, from the classic insult, "You're such a heel." Others who are portrayed as heroes are known as faces, from the term babyface. Babyface is cute and good, and so if you're a babyface, if you're a good guy, you're a face. But in order to produce drama over the course of wrestling careers, people will go back and forth between being a villain and a hero. And so whenever a villain turns into a hero or vice versa, it's known as a turn, because they've turned from being a villain to being a hero or vice versa. So if a hero goes to being a villain, that is known as a face heel turn, because you went from being a babyface to being a heel. But if you are a villain and you become a good guy, that is known as a heel face turn. And that's what Janeway does in this episode. She is like a professional wrestler who's pretending to be a bad guy, and then she suddenly turns and becomes good, and that's her heel face turn.
I always thought, I'd heard the term heel turn before. I always thought like it's someone who turned on their heel. It was an abrupt change. But I guess not.
It may partially inspire that as well, but a heel turn is where you become a heel.
Right. Interesting. It's kind of interesting. Thank you for that. A little bit of knowledge, always good. So Janeway ends up fighting once she does her switch. She ends up fighting the diviner. As you mentioned, she pulls one of the tubes with the life-saving liquid, which we're not sure what that's all about yet.
I like that they don't even bother giving us technobabble. They've just made the point.
Yes, it is vital to his survival somehow.
And that makes it really disturbing when Janeway just yanks that thing.
Yes, he is disabled at that point. Although I don't see them fix it, and he doesn't seem to be dying. So,
they do show it fixed.
They do that
when they're in the hologram. It is fixed, so you can imagine that. Okay, so Gwen took him down to the sick bay, and they fixed it, and then went to the hologram.
But it's that moment where he's severely damaged and could die that forces the truth out of him, and he turns to Gwen and says, "Save our people."
Right. And this goes to something that we've been speculating on in previous episodes. I think you, Father Cory, was advancing this one, especially was that he was a time traveler, not Gwen specifically.
Yeah, there's going to be time travel involved. And I thought that it might be the protostar, which it still could be. I mean, we don't know that for a fact, but
you were right.
Definitely.
Credit.
Yep. Yeah. Credit where credit's due.
I'll take it.
So send back in time to save their planet, and they takes them to the holodeck where there's conveniently a program running that in the databanks of Solemn.
Solemn is basically John Connor, I guess.
Solemn is the planet.
Solemn's the planet, but the diviner is John Connor.
The diviner is John Connor.
Does that make
you can see him feed a memory card into the.
Oh, he does. Yes, he does. Dreadnock would be the Terminator then, I guess.
He sticks an SD card into the memory slot of the Protostar's holodeck.
And so we get this extended moment where he's explaining to Gwen, like, look, we're saving our people because Starfleet, it was introduced as this factor in our society that caused division. And I kind of feel like this is a bit of the real world breaking through the fourth wall here. Like we're talking about divisions in society, which I think is a worthwhile thing to talk about.
I thought it was just a nice poke at the Prime Directive.
Yeah,
I mean, or a nice bit of realism that when you make first contact with people, it's not always going to go right.
Right.
True. Right. Yeah, and we've had first contacts go poorly in past the Star Trek too, but this is the most dramatic.
I was thinking Planet Earth. We've had first contacts go poorly.
Right. That's true.
A lot of them.
But I felt like there was also a little bit of, there's a lot of talk these days about, division, and he talks about that it caused a division within their society. Do we want to be part of the Federation? Do we not? And that it created a civil war that caused the complete destruction. And so his solution is to go back in time and prevent it, but not by, convincing people that this was a bad course to take, but no, to genocide or at least to destroy thousands of people's lives.
Civilization aside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like the best solution.
Yeah. Psychopath much?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right. And while he's showing Gwyn the holodeck image of Solemn, the Red 12, they managed to get it flying. They get there. They managed to get the protostar to drop its shields by shooting it, even though they don't feel it on board. They don't notice.
It's very targeted. They're trying to shoot the shield emitters and not otherwise damage the ship.
Right. So he plans to use this viral weapon to wipe out Starfleet, and it doesn't seem like a great plan. this virus
does it?
Because, I mean, sure, you'll infect a couple ships, they'll start attacking each other. So, but are you gonna just? Starfleet's pretty resilient.
Subspace radio speed limitation itself is going to slow the propagation of this virus and give people a chance to hit the kill switch and turn off their internet.
Right. Yeah, and find a solution and program it out, and it just doesn't seem
release
like
a patch.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw this with early Next Generation episode where the Galaxy class ships were having computer because the Yamato got blown up in something like this.
I know, and it's so funny watching those late 80s shows where the writers don't yet know the term computer virus, and they
exactly
they have to refer to it as something like a self-replicating data pattern,
which is a good definition of a computer virus,
which is pretty much a virus, a self-replicating data pattern, but physical in the case of a biological virus. Yeah, and then you mentioned how Gwyn realizes we have this tragic moment, and it's a pretty good writing gimmick that they have her find out that they can never go to Starfleet, which is the thing that they finally figured out they want to do. Like we finally overcome our division among ourselves, and our desire to run away as opposed to be part of something bigger. And then now it turns out that they can't. This is that dramatic moment. And then she's going to forget that they can't. And we end on this dramatic note of, we're going to go, and it should be our triumph, but the audience knows this is a bad thing. But does Janeway forget? Like, was Janeway not monitoring any
Janeway
of this?
wasn't there.
Janeway wasn't there. She wasn't in the holodeck when the Diviner revealed all this.
And we're still going with the old thing that the holo programs are only present in one place at one time.
She literally walks into the holodeck. With the rest of the crew.
Yeah.
I know. Really, she should be. I mean, she's the ship's Alexa. She should be hearing everything that goes on board.
Yeah. Right.
24th century privacy controls are much stronger, apparently.
Yes, even when bad guys are on board. But
of course, it's funny though, because there's a couple episodes ago where they're talking and Dal says, "Janeway, I know you're listening."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You'd think they would be, listening. Well, anyway.
Kids show.
Yeah, kid show. So Dal is the first one to beam aboard. They can only beam, once they've only got so much of the shields down. So he beams aboard alone to rescue Gwyn. He confronts the Diviner.
And the Diviner immediately takes him out with that programmable matter bracelet thingy that Gwyn has. Earlier, Gwyn tries to use it on the Diviner. She's like going to skewer him with it. And he's like, "Oh, yes. Remember who gave you this thing?" And then whoop, he takes control of it.
Yes. Yes, that was good. I thought that was you would never give he doesn't seem like the type to give a weapon to someone that he can't be immune from. And that's the case here.
Yep.
So yeah, Gwyn tries to help. She gets hurt by the Diviner, and that's when Zero shows up. You mentioned, and
that's pretty powerful when he gets out of his shell, and his rationale is, you used me to hurt other people, and because humans are not able, and other similar sentients are not able to bear the image of a Medusan without going crazy.
Right.
That's established back in the original series. And so when he gets out of his shell, it's like, you used me to hurt others. Now I'm going to make sure you can't hurt anybody else. So wham, massive sanity attack.
Right. And then you have Dal holding Gwyn's like head. Just look in my eyes. Don't look at what's going on. They'll usually close your eyes, but okay.
That would be better.
That would have been better. Would have saved her, because she ends up seeing Zero's reflection in Dal's comm badge, which is symbolic, that the symbol of Starfleet. It also harkens back to that original series episode, because it was Spock who got a glimpse of the Medusan, right? That's what we forgot, and that sort of thing. So even a reflection will do some damage, and so she's disabled before she can tell them about the viral weapon, and she eventually gets healed. We get this extended epilogue where Janeway, talks about what's happened since the Diviner. He's been abandoned, which is interesting that they abandoned him on the planet Insane.
Yeah, that's not really realistic. You don't, if you're Starfleet and you have a drooling idiot, you don't, even if he was a bad guy, he's a drooling idiot now. And you don't leave him on a planet by himself with no means to take care of himself.
Yeah.
Now, what's going to happen dramatically, though, is this is how they bring him back as a series villain, because they also left the decapitated Dreadnock on that asteroid.
Yeah.
And so eventually Dreadnock is going to get put back together, and he and Solemn together will reemerge as series villains.
They'll find some way to get off the planet, because the Rev 12 is gone. The Unwanted have taken the Rev 12 off on their own adventures.
Yeah. And it could be as simple as Diamond Nandy shows up for payment.
Right. Right. Yeah. That I could see that happening. So, and then, like I said, we had this extended Janeway log, training officers log, about how they've all dealt with what's happened and how the crew is now recovering. Gwyn is recovering, although she's lost her memory, and they're off to, and Zero is affected by what has happened to Gwyn, that Zero feels some responsibility. And then we get this epilogue of Admiral Janeway aboard the USS Dauntless, which is a ship that has been mentioned before, and I don't know if it's been mentioned in live action, but it's certainly been mentioned in books.
So this is actually based off of the Voyager episode Hope and Fear, where the fake USS Dauntless comes from the future. It was the NX-01A, and it was actually a fake ship. But Voyager was able to get lots of data off of it, and this is according to the producers, that this ship was built based off of the Voyager data.
Right. So it was a future ship. It has a quantum slipstream drive, which is the faster than warp drive, but presumably not as fast as proto warp.
Right.
And they've been apparently detecting the proto warp signature and been trying to track it down, and so they finally got the coordinates, and so they're heading off. So presumably what's going to happen is they're going to show up to the protostar, and the virus is going to affect the Dauntless, and it's going to start attacking the protostar, and that's how they're going to overcome the virus, probably.
Or something, but it'll be contained in the Gamma Quadrant, away from the rest of the Federation.
Right.
Exactly.
So
unfortunately now, and also it's worth noting that Janeway believes Captain Chakotay is still in command of the protostar. So there's going to be an interesting awakening when they get in contact. But we have a problem of the kids can't just ever take the ship to the Federation and turn it over, or we have no series anymore.
Right.
So even though, I mean, unless they want to get much more creative with writing than I suspect, if this is a typical children's show, those kids will always be on that ship, and as their primary mode of transportation. And so that means that even if we get temporary stuff with Janeway, with real biological Janeway, we should have a holographic Janeway and biological Janeway. But even if we get stuff like this, an encounter with biological Janeway, it is not going to last. And so there will have to be a separation.
And I could see them doing something like where some of the original crew of the ProStar, like Chakotay, are recovered.
Yeah.
And then they go back in charge of the ship, and then the kids remain on the ship as cadets, and that kind of deal.
And that would be more creative than I'm expecting them to be, because that's out having a fundamental change of premise like that, where you have real biological adults in the room. When they weren't there at the end of episode 1, when the premise was established, that's more creative than you typically get in children's television. In children's television, once you establish the main plot, you typically don't change it.
It would be fun to see them Dal have to deal with no longer being the captain and trying to conform to Starfleet standards. Excuse me.
To be fair too, though, in children's television, you usually don't see the change like Rock went through and see that sticking. So, I mean, and I don't see it being that dramatic of a change. Although, yeah, it would be a shift, because I don't see them keeping the Diviner around through multiple seasons.
It's only so
I
long.
think he's a one season bad guy, and then he'll be
defeated,
vanquished to Starfleet prison or something.
Because that's the other thing about children's programming is like, unless it's the Smurfs, and you have Azrael, Gargamel, Gargamel, it's more like you have resolution with villains, essentially. Either it's a Skeletor and He-Man sort of thing, or it's a villain that gets resolved at the end of the season. And it feels like, I don't feel like that they can drag out this Planet Solemn thing forever.
No, they do, and eventually need to get to a point where they undo the disastrous first contact.
Yeah.
In one way or another, that first contact becomes undone later in the series. There may still be a first contact, but it won't be the one that doomed everybody on Solemn.
Maybe it was the Cerritos who went back for second contact and messed everything up.
That would be fun. That would be fun.
Really funny.
Although it does take place, I think this did 50 years in the future, but just imagining that. All right. Any other thoughts on this episode, Father Cory?
No, I think we got everything I wanted to talk about.
How about you, Jimmy?
The same, although I don't know that the first contact is 50 years in the future. When the Diviner was showing Gwyn the holodeck, he said, show Solemn 50 years after first contact.
Right.
Okay.
And so we're seeing the wasteland that resulted as a result of their genocidal civil war. So presumably first contact is going to be much closer in time, which will generate extra drama in the next year, later in this first season or in the second season or something. It's going to become urgent to address the first contact situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The Diviner might have been sent back, 60 or 70 years, because of course he's been looking for the ProStar for 13 years. And then, so like if first contact happens the next year, you're talking again, 65 years or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. I get that. All right. That's good. I like that better, because then it makes it much more present. All right. So as far as we're concerned, this is our end of our time with Prodigy for now, and we'll pick up when they come back at some point.
I'm so glad we had this time together.
Thank you, Carol Burnett. Another reference, folks.
Another deep cut 70s TV callback, or 70s 80s TV callback. Yeah.
So we'll be picking up from here. We're going to be Actually, we're going to be going back to our rotation through the pre-existing Star Trek, and we're going to be finishing out the first season of Discovery with the very last episode of Discovery. Finally.
Oh.
Yes. But then eventually in a few weeks, we're going to have the season premiere of Picard Season 2. So we'll be talking about that when it comes out as well. So before that, we finish up, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Peter E., Daniel M., James O., Billy C., and Placid K. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you think of this first mid-season finale, the first half of the first season of Prodigy, a moral star.
It's the first season, no matter what they call it. This was the first season.
All right, let's call it that for now. What do you think of this first season of Prodigy? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, or our Facebook page, facebook.com/starquestmedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. And like I said, we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing Will You Take My Hand, the season finale of Discovery Season 1. And until then, Father Cory Sticha.
Me slapping the hand away.
There you go. No, that was the answer to that question. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, they are each a prodigy in the making.